After this, outside in the tent, we return to the first formal plenaries at 2:45. At 2:45, kindly, we return to this main hall for our session.
On economic development and repair, investing in transformative local-led priorities, health system, technology transfer, climate resilience, youth employment, addressing the enduring socio-economic consequences of historical extraction, institutional accountability, ensuring that global system, financial, educational, and cultural do not continue patterns of exclusion and undervaluation or structural disadvantage for people of African descent, and commemoration and memorialization. And for that also I want just to indicate that UNESCO, with the Ministry of Education and the sister ministries, we are working also now to introduce the publication of Kwame Nkrumah into the registry of the world, the memory of the world. As much as he has been popular, we did not register him to that memory of the world. And so that work is being done under the leadership of Excellency President John Mahama. And we believe the ministry, we are going to accelerate within the course of next year. So by the time we reach the 70th anniversary of Ghana, we will be able to speak boldly and proudly that Kwame Nkrumah's publication has now made it into the World Global Registry. And yeah, she's standing, so I better just skip. So as we look forward in the spirit of UNESCO and solidarity with Ghana's call, let us leave this hall ready to build the defenses of peace in the minds of all by teaching what happened, naming what it was, and repairing what it broke. May we build a world where the dignity of people of African descent is not defended only in declarations, but lived in institutions. May we build curricula that do not shrink history, but expand humanity. May we build society where differences is not punished, but honored. May we build a peace that is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice. Let us live today committed to something enduring, to remember with honesty, to educate with integrity, and to act with courage, so that the future does not repeat the crimes of the past, but fulfill the promises of our shared human family. As I stated earlier, UNESCO's role is not to replace national leadership represented here, responsibility, but to create a platform where the world can speak honestly to itself, where the international community can name what happened and what must never happen again. I thank you.
Been born in good times, for we are the unfettered voices our ancestors wished to have, and be that cocktail they wished would go down their throats into memory and lend the strength of hope. Yet we are those people they called nomads with no place to dwell. But mind you, the world could not count our steps, and so they chose to call it dance. Welcome to this place where dance was born. Welcome to this place where we do not beat our palms anymore, but we beat our chests, because our chests are as good as a drum as any animal skin could ever be. That is the warrior's call. Ago, ago, ago. Are we all not children of one womb, from different corners summoned to the center? Your seat was meant for you. It is by no mistake that you are here. My people, sleep is for the strong. And so one man went to sleep, woke the entire clan, and we showed up. It is still midnight, and so I choose to wear black on the day when we celebrate the power of our victory. For darkness is the only backdrop against which light can be seen. They call us the dark continent, but please, we are all the gold the world could ever have. For our gold is not stashed in the earth, it's not stashed in votes, it is stashed in the great minds that we have received from our ancestors. My people, my mission is simple. It is on the ends of old ropes that new ones are woven. And so, when a man is sure of his footing, he dares life to bring on its worst. Blood and toil of our fathers, the sweat of our mothers. Drums, it is not for war this time, my people. When we beat our drums, it is a summoning of the entire clan. Show up and make sure your name is heard. Make sure and ensure that you pass this rhythm down to generations yet to enter the thought of time, that a time in history came where we took an about turn and said that we will be Alpha, call us Omega, call us whichever label. We cannot be suppressed. Can we have another discussion for another day? We are waiting for trained hands of leadership. We choose to call midwives who will place us in fantastic incubators, call it leadership, who will take us to that promised land. This is the promised land. My people, welcome home. And so when a man is guilty of something that is wrong, we name his name and then we beat it on the gongs. When one is guilty of something great, my people, it is only proper that we name and hail. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the center of the world. I came with respect to the Creator, with respect to our kings, to name a man who has rallied all of us and said, come, let us reason together and take our destinies into our own hands. Thank you for the work you have done. Your Excellency, pardon me to come down. I come down because I am simply a child who is learning the steps of our elders. Of what use is a son who cannot interpret his own father's dance? And a child is not held in contempt for calling his father's oath out of 10. Your Excellency, when a king sits in a palanquin and throws his hands about and it remains on the ground, he is simply lying to himself and tickling himself with all the dreams he hopes to have. But when his people go on their knees and they pick him up, when he throws his hands about, beats them on his chest, shows them up to heaven, he is truly master of all that he surveys. Out of palanquins and skins, you choose not to have either. Your Excellency, I do not reduce your rank. The world is here, and they are willing to listen to the dream you had that made you summon the clan, and everybody has shown up. If you rise gently, may earth receive you in good stead. Your Excellency, when you take your first steps, let it be history, for it is the most difficult thing, my people, placing one foot in front of the other. That is the only way the old woman will conquer the summits of the mountain. Your Excellency, the world is ready to listen. Tell them something about Sonyo, and then tell them something about St. James they might never have thought about. Tell them the Atlantic is now a playground where we trade fantastic ideas. We are no longer bound by fetters on our hands or even on our minds, and so it's a bead and a watch. My people, it's about time we rub our culture in the face of the world. It says we are one big body that cannot be broken by shackles, by language, by metals. A good matter is short. This one has yet to start from the beginning. Your Excellency, until you rise, I will not leave. And when you rise, I will lead you gently to the place where you will offer word and the world will listen. I wait, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Nana Sasi. Let me ask you a question, not as president, but as a student of history. Have you ever wondered why the story of Ghana never included the story of the diaspora? When telling the story of Ghana, many are inclined to begin in 1821 with the formation of the British-ruled Gold Coast colony. But that's inaccurate, because the collective story of our people, the many ethnic groups that populate this country, Ghana, predates the existence of any colony on this African continent. Similarly, when speaking of the transatlantic slave trade, specifically the atrocities that took place on this soil, many are inclined to end our story on the shores of this nation, where our ancestors, and I do mean that word literally because they were our blood and bone that were forced onto ships and transported across the Atlantic. But why do these events that follow cease to be part of Ghana's story also? Between the 16th and 19th centuries, nearly 13 million African men, women, and children were captured and transported on ships through the Middle Passage. Over 2 million of them died, some because of the harsh conditions, and others because of disease. But there were also those who chose to end it all by jumping overboard. And there were also the ships that sank in storms on the Atlantic, taking with them our forebears who were shackled and chained limb to limb, turning the Gulf of Guinea and the waters of the Atlantic beyond it into a graveyard of our ancestors. Ghana contains more slave forts and castles than any other nation on the African continent. Indeed, over 70 of them, with many still intact, but there are others that lie in ruins today. People who were captured in other areas of the sub-region were marched on foot to one of the forts or castles on Ghana's coast, where they were kept, usually in dungeons, until it was time for them to be loaded as cargo onto ships. Given all this, it would be safe to assume that a significant percentage of the enslaved people, even if they did not originate from the area that is now called Ghana, passed through it on their way to the slave destinations. What followed for each and every one of those individuals is as much a part of Ghana's story as what followed for us who remained firmly rooted here on our soil, but were subjugated and rendered second-class citizens nonetheless through colonization. As Kendrick says, bear with me for a second and let me put you on the game. The Portuguese were the first Europeans to land on our shores. They began the practice of extraction of gold, copper, ivory, chili peppers, and then eventually they moved on to the extraction of human beings. It was the Portuguese who gave the River Volta its name. Volta in Portuguese means to return. They used the River Volta as a kind of boundary. It was the farthest they could travel. Once there, they had to turn around and begin their return. The Portuguese, who were superb shipwrights and navigators, therefore called Volta do Mar, which literally translates as return from the sea, but can also be taken as a turn of the sea. With Volta do Mar, they reversed the course of their ships, using the winds from the currents created by the North Atlantic jar to carry them faster without encountering rough waters. The point at which the River Volta empties into the Gulf of Guinea is part of the Atlantic Ocean. It is called the estuary of the Volta at Adanfoan. For those of you who have not yet had the pleasure of visiting Adan, it is a small coastal town a little over 100 kilometers away from Accra. I've spent some of my most peaceful moments there. I've enjoyed the tranquil river until where it meets the choppy, aggressive waters of the Atlantic Ocean. For years, I did not know the history of these two bodies of water. When I found out, I was stunned. And every time I think about it, I'm still shaken by the cruel irony that even as our people who were enslaved were being forced to walk through the door of no return, their captors had already ensured their own safe return and even memorialized their method of achieving it by lending its name to a river. The Ghanaian American author Ya Jesse wrote in her novel, Homegoing, "We believe the one who has power. He's the one who gets to write the story. So when you study history, you must ask yourself, whose story am I missing? Whose voice was suppressed? So that this voice can come forth. Once you have figured that out, you must find that story too as part of the narrative. By finding and owning the stories of our past, the ones that have been suppressed, we're able to truly know ourselves. And with that knowledge of self comes the power to write ourselves truthfully, respectfully, into not only our future, but the future of all humanity. And that is why we're gathered here today at this Diaspora Summit, to begin the process of reclamation in earnest, to begin the process of writing our own story and moving full steam ahead. That's right, we're reclaiming everything that was ours. Your Excellency For Esozima Yasingbe, Chairman of the Council of the Republic of Togo, Your Royal Majesties, our traditional leaders, the Chairman of the Council of State, our senior government officials, members of the Diplomatic Corps, our brothers and sisters from our 17th region, the African Diaspora, I say a very warm welcome to you. Welcome home. This is your home. The reason I believe it is important that we begin to consciously carry the story of the diaspora as part and parcel of Ghana's story is because what divides us ultimately, what denies us the ability to be whole, is that division. And that's precisely why it's the perfect way to conquer. We have to stop drawing those lines of demarcation that say, I end here and you begin there. I look into the audience and I can see myself in so many of your faces. And I'm sure that I'll be able to see my children in the faces of your children. And so how can I turn my back on the fact that we are undeniably, inextricably part of each other? And yet, we have been divided with artificial borders of colonialism that split ethnic homelands right down the middle, with half of our communities being ruled by one European country and the other half being ruled by another. And with the labeling of our ethnicity in a colony as intellectual and worthy of education, while another ethnicity was said to be inherently martial and thus intellectually inferior. We've been divided by the manufacturing of coups, armed conflicts, anti-poverty programs that somehow never eradicate poverty, by the selective broadcast of stereotypes, a systemic war of images waged against us, images meant to foster fear and engender self-hatred and portrayal of Africans as primitive savages, whose low cognitive ability makes them incapable of self-determination, and Black people in the Americas as lazy, drug-addled, and criminally inclined. And there too is the institutionalization of colorism. The belief that anything Black is negative or inferior, and the proximity to whiteness is more desirable. It is reflected in every aspect of our lives. And I say us because colonization did not leave us unscathed, quite the opposite. In English, everything negative and evil is Black. In Spanish, la negra means Black woman. Tener la negra means to have bad luck or to be jinxed. A once popular French expression that went out of vogue but has recently been making a comeback is travailler comme enrichment and exile of our liberation leaders. We now know as Ghanaians, as author Ama Taidu wrote, that there are powerful forces undermining our progress in Africa. We suffered decades of brain drain that emptied a sizable portion of the continent's population, adding scores of exiles to the diaspora. And our nations themselves were surviving but barely on the remittances that those individuals sent home. It will surprise you to know, in 1990, the total number of Africans who had migrated voluntarily to the United States eclipsed the total number who had been brought as enslaved people to leaving an utterly devastated continent. We're at a very pivotal place in our journey. There are those who will have us go backward, not just 1 or 2 steps, as if that would not be bad enough. They want us to go all the way back. They want us to develop some sort of amnesia about the blood that was spilled, the lives that were lost, and the years that were sacrificed in order to fight for our freedom. We're at a place in our journey where we do not have the luxury of forgetting. When government officials can so easily use the words like garbage and filth to describe our kith and kin, when they can refer to our countries as shitholes, when they can indiscriminately strip people who look like us of citizenship that they have earned, we do not have the luxury of forgetting or of either excusing the racist dog whistles or explaining the overtly discriminatory and divisive statements that are made daily to our hearing. This is precisely the time when we must advance and begin the process of reclamation. This is precisely the time when we must speak loudly and clearly, naming what it is we have lost as well as what it is we hope to gain. Her Excellency Mian Amor Motley, Prime Minister of Barbados, a great African sister, said in a lecture at the London School of Economics, the conspiracy of silence has diminished the horror of what our people faced. This year, at the UN General Assembly, I served notice that Ghana will move a motion next year to recognize the transatlantic slave trade as the greatest crime against humanity. I know this motion will enjoy the utmost support from the entire African continent and the diaspora. Africa has suffered slavery, colonialism, genocide, and apartheid. We demand acknowledgement of these crimes against humanity. We demand the establishment of legal, institutional, and international mechanisms to advance reparative justice. Reparations must include tangible measures such as debt cancellation, monetary compensation, return of stolen artifacts, institutional reform, and transformative economic redress in the global economic system. Beyond the material loss that Africa suffered, are also the emotional cost to assess. According to the Oxford Dictionary, epigenetics is the study of changes in organisms that are caused by the modification of gene expression rather than the alteration of the genetic code itself. And studies have shown that trauma can be passed down transgenerationally through epigenetics. And so imagine then the various traumas that the people of African descent have faced. Traumas that are being passed down from one generation onto the other. Traumas from yesteryears coupled with traumas of today and the injustices that we are currently facing. What impact does that have on our health? What impact does that have on the health of our children? And most importantly, how do we heal from that trauma? Ghanaian British actress, writer Michelle Cole wrote, "We can put fear of the future in front of us to block us, or put it behind us to drive us forward." As you debate all these questions and ideas, bear in mind that the future is upon us and that the future is African. And like I said at the UN, let me say it louder one more time for those in the back. The future is African. We hold in our hands the power to change the circumstances of our past. But we must be more intentional about our unity than those who oppressed us were about our division. And from the looks of this gathering, I can feel it, that we are more united than ever. And with a united Africa and diaspora, there is nothing we cannot achieve. I thank you. I wish you fruitful deliberations, and it's my honor and privilege to declare the Diaspora Summit 2025 duly opened. Thank you.
Their motives may have been shaped by the geopolitical pressures of their time, but the consequences were devastating and are still devastating today. As the Garmancher and custodian of our collective memory, I must state openly, on behalf of all traditional leadership in the ancient Ga kingdoms, in the Gadangbe state, I stand in solidarity with all custodians of Ghanaian and African heritage. I acknowledge these painful truths, and I express regret and apologize for any roles our forebears may have played in this tragedy. This humility does not weaken our demand for repatriations, it strengthens it. For true justice must rest on honesty, not denial. The true reconciliation must be grounded in truth, not silence. The true repatriations must be built upon shared accountability, not selective memory. Ladies and gentlemen, as we champion repatriations, we must also manage expectations. The global repatriations agenda is profoundly complex legally, diplomatically, and politically. Even the African Union's own technical committee on repatriations recognized the immense challenges, structural challenges we face.